As a preacher, I make a living using words, yet words often fail to birth an emotional response for those who have been created in the very image of God. For by themselves, words can be empty, cold, and void of meaning. In fact, I would argue that it's only when they're attached to the embodied experience and have the breath of life breathed into them that they're actually given real meaning. So know that it's not the words that I'm about to share that will give the fire and the depth and the zest to the life of the giant I'm going to do my very best to reflect upon, but rather the man himself, the path he chose, and the legacy he carved. For in the eyes of his grandson, this man was no mere mortal. He was an ideal. He was not only my grandpa, he was my hero. And despite all of my deepest desires, I am fully unable to claim before you that I am who I am because of who he was, for this man was larger than life. And at the end of the day, my very best hope is to become but a fraction of the man, husband, daddy, father-in-law, and Christ follower that he was. Now, his window of light on earth recently closed, so the precious moments I have of him will have to serve as the fuel for what I'm about to say. And they are anything but words. They are the testimony of a life well lived. I think the words that need to be spoken first are this. They are threefold. At a young age in Miami, Florida, my grandfather encountered the story of the risen Messiah and decided to enter it therein. At the time of his death, it can only be said that he had loved one woman. The love and devotion he had to his God and to his soulmate were the driving forces behind everything he took on, every standard he created, every goal he set, every achievement he reached, and every day he had breath in his lungs. A tirelessly devoted father of three, I would say that he was a passionate family man, and he certainly was. But once again, these words, they fall woefully short of describing the man he was, because Fletcher Jones was passionate about everything, right? Look out, world, when he decided to put his hand to the plow. For nothing he ever faced was a formidable opponent for the incredible drive and devotion this man nurtured in his bones. Whether it was lying about his age as a 17-year-old boy to enlist in the Navy, to get in before the big fight, as he would say, tenaciously battling for his client in a court of law, picking up every single last pecan in his backyard, or cheering on his beloved Crimson Tide at whatever sport they played, he, quote unquote, hit it like he lived, hard and fast, as the boys at the Florida Power Company he used to work with as a teenager would always say. He never faced a challenge that he didn't think he could conquer with the Spirit's help. For there's no question that his deep, abiding faith in the grace of God was what was propelling his unrivaled spirit of devotion and pride. Now, when it comes to my grandmother, that first cup of coffee they shared on the campus of the University of Alabama was the start of an absolutely beautiful friendship and an absolutely iconic marriage. One that was minted in wedding rings and magnolia blooms of June 1st, 1952. A relationship that speaks directly to the indescribable providence shown to my grandpa by the Almighty God. For only the Lord could create something so perfect. Speaking of providence, I think it's worth telling that my grandmother was once cautioned against carrying on with that Fletcher Jones because he had neither a suit nor a car. Now, fortunately, my grandmother had the good sense to discount this woman's stupid opinion, if I say so myself, and give her full heart to the man who would one day become the patriarch of us all. By the way, he'd have a car before long, many of them over the years. Shiny Cadillacs, too. But I'll always be partial to that old white Ford pickup truck with the nicks and dings of yellow parking posts scrubbed deep down into its sides, its blue vinyl seats burning hot on my young legs in the middle of summer. He eventually got that suit too, by the way. The sharpest of dressers, he owned more than I would ever be able to count. And he wore one every single day to work over the course of his 50 plus years of practicing law and fighting for the oppressed and marginalized in George Wallace's Alabama. As a gentleman of a different era, he even wore a suit to work during the final years of his showing up to work. And by showing up, I really just mean coming to the business he had once birthed all by himself to open his mail. But he was a professional of the highest order, so suit and tie it was. Though the most impressive suit he ever donned is the one he owns now. That being the clothes of Christ's righteousness that he will wear for eternity. As one of my personal favorites among all of God's creation, he was a true steward of the earth that the Lord had fashioned and deemed good. He never missed an opportunity to take me on a road trip to the fresh pine-laced air of his ancestors in Barber County, Alabama. Now, the Bible that we read says that moths and rust will eventually wreak havoc on that old home place over there, that the thieves will break in and steal, and that's all proven prophetic. But he continually impressed upon me that I shouldn't worry about any of those old boards and nails that his parents called home. Instead, we should invest our efforts in the kingdom that's both under construction and is yet to be revealed. I think that's easy to do when you truly know what your treasures are. Looking back, among the greatest of mine involved swinging on a rope above Sandy and Coal Creek while a certain fella in a black World War II veteran hat cheered me on and laughed from the banks. I should include that there was no good way to get to this place. It was a much longer trip than he would ever have you believe, but I thank God for that too. It was more time than I got to spend with my hero. And the selfish human side of me obviously wishes that I had even more time with him. Upon his passing, I held it together fairly well until the night before his funeral, and I'll never forget the moment the little girl that called him Paul, his great-granddaughter Ella Claire Jones, asked me why I was sad. I told her it's because we weren't going to get to play with Paul anymore. And that's when the sparkling blue eyes that she inherited from him twinkled back at me and simply, reassuringly said the words, "We will. Someday." Perhaps no truer words have ever been spoken, with the exception of when he told me one dark winter's evening when I was wrangling with him to take his medicine, and I quote, "I am not afraid of death," before quoting the words of Jesus in Matthew's Gospel, "For I'll be with you always."